Welcome to Gray to Great, the podcast where we will pull back the curtain on what it truly takes to thrive as a corporate retirement plan advisor in today's tech-powered business world. I'm Dal Degan, but all my friends call me Triple D. As a former sales leader and CEO and now board member of Great Group, I know that success in this field goes beyond the numbers. In each episode, I'm going to team up with one of your peer retirement plan advisors to bring you the strategies that separate the best from the rest. From prospecting and referral business to challenger selling and tech adoption, we're diving deep into the parts of the business that too many of us overlook. Whether you're here to sharpen your skills or if you're looking for the next big idea, this is where the playbook gets rewritten. So get ready for sharp, actionable insights that'll take your practice to the next level. Because in sales, there's no gray area. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray to Great. I'm your host, Dal Degan. And I'm joined today by our guest, Andrew Mirolli, who's the co-founder of buyAUM in Atlanta. Welcome, Andrew.
Dan, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us today. I'm excited about this conversation because you have a slightly different angle on this business relative to many of the plan advisors with whom we speak. And that is that you serve the needs of plan advisors. And I'm eager to hear about that journey that led you to this phase of your career. But let's perhaps start with your origin story. As the founder, the co-founder of buyAUM, it sounds like that represented a bit of a shift in the early stage of your career into this segment. I'd love to hear how you came about that.
No, it really was. And it's a refreshing change of pace for me over the last 3 years. My origin story goes back to graduating college. I went to University of Georgia. My father was a financial advisor at the time, Air Force pilot turned advisor. And I said, Pop, give me every phone number of a wholesaler that's been calling you. I'm going to call them. And I said, who hires unlicensed guys that are ready to work? And that took me out to Newport Beach, California. I got my licenses. I started as a grunt, making cold calls, grew to manage the sales desk, eventually was an external wholesaler. That whole world was my life for 6 to 8 years. I enjoyed it. I loved the private equity, the deal making. When I was in school, I studied abroad in Brazil and had an internship with Heinz Global Real Estate. And I was my one project, right? They've got all these MBAs and masters, and I'm some kid out of school. And they said, recreate this cash flow of a REIT like a pro forma. And I had this light bulb moment that, wow, you can make money doing anything. They're making 23% on warehouses in Rio. And I'm like, wow. So I loved that aspect of the business, whether it's oil and gas or data centers or what have you. So I did that for many years, built relationships with advisors. I eventually came back to Atlanta. My father, as I said, was an advisor. He was doing an exit. And so he had some partners. He wanted to sell the business. And it took him 2.5 years. It almost broke the firm apart. They lost one of their partners. It was a huge mess. And I had gotten a cold call a few years earlier from my now co-founder. And we struck up a conversation. Great opening line. I said, I'll give you 30 seconds. And we became friends. And we stumbled upon this inefficiency in the market, which is succession. Many advisors don't have a succession plan. And the way it's currently done is Zillow, where you, me, my gardener all get these emails of, hey, this practice is listed, right? And so he said, how do we improve this, flip it on its head and turn it more into a consultative, bespoke matchmaking service? And so that's where really buyAUM was born out of a necessity to say, how can we make this better? And so to go back, the origin, the shift in my story goes from, hey, Mr. Advisor, let me tell you about this great product to, I want to get you paid versus I want you to give me money, right? So it's a very refreshing change of pace. I love the clients and the advisors that we work with. I pick up a lot of great little sayings from, the older generation, which has been really, really valuable for me. But I love what we're doing today.
It's a fascinating topic, Andrew, and as you can probably tell, and our viewers can, they're probably assuming, hey, I appear to be about that age. I'm probably somebody who is either currently or recently has gone through that cycle of preparing for this next phase of a career that we call retirement. And what does that mean? And so let's explore, why do you suppose it is, and you have an informed point of view here, given the focus of your work, that most business owners, in this case, plan advisors, but I imagine it's transferable to a lot of other private practices or even public company professional careers, that people like us, when we get to that stage of our journey, are ill prepared for what comes next, what we call retirement?
I think it is, I think it's twofold. I think part of it is the love of the game. Like, I love my business. I love operating, whatever it is, whether I'm a painter, a roofer, plan advisor, or a wealth manager. And so I think part of it is being focused on what's ahead, in front of us and building the business and serving the clients. And that's excellent, right? I also think it's a bit of a scary topic. Like, I don't want to think about doing my taxes on July 4th. I'll get there when I get there, right? And so I think it's like I'm focused on building what's in front of me, but also I don't really want to think about, what am I going to do after my identity is wrapped up in this thing that I'm great at? And so I think it is a little bit of fear, if I'm going to be honest. And the result of that is ill preparedness. And from a statistical standpoint, it's shocking. It's like 72%, this is across the industry, of exited founders or exited business owners a year later regret selling. And it doesn't have to do with the money in their pocket, the finances. It is, well, what do I do now? And so I think it's something that needs to be talked about because, it's we plan for business, we plan for financially, we don't plan for the personal leg of the stool. What do I care about? What am I passionate about? We work with advisors. We're working with an advisor in the Gulf Coast region, and he and his wife were like partners in the business. They're a wealth manager, and they're selling their practice. I said, "Great, let's call them Steve and Jane." I said, Steve, Jane, what are you guys going to do after you sell the business? It's a great number. And Jane popped in and she said, "Well, we're going to move to Colorado and build a house." I said, "Great, but what are you going to do?" And she's like, we went back and forth a few times. And I said, "How many hours a week do you collectively spend in the business?" And it was like upwards of 70. And I said, "Sitting on a front porch drinking sweet tea is great. It's not going to fill that hole." And so we encourage them, "Hey, I'm passionate about charities." It's okay. What charities? What do you want to do for them? "I'm passionate about traveling." "Where do you want to travel? When are you going to take those trips?" It's almost a business plan for the third act, and put some thought into it.
That's a great dissertation there. And I think what you're hitting on, Andrew, is the fear that a lot of us have, and I know I've gone through this, and in many ways, I still think about it with regularity, is finding purpose in that next chapter. Because, and somebody used an analogy with me that made a lot of sense, is when you see a great legendary athlete that's someday on their way to the Hall of Fame, somebody like, a Tom Brady, or here in Chicago where I live, when you see the legends retire, back in the old days when Walter Payton retired, and they give those press conferences. The reason they're teary-eyed in their press conference, what are they going to miss? The off-season workouts, the grueling physical demands on your body? No, they're going to miss the camaraderie with their teammates. They're going to miss the road trips, the goofing around, the feeling of purpose and feeling a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And how do you find that in the next chapter, the next phase of your career? Because it is yet another phase. And I have found it doing board work and, in fact, hosting this podcast with my friends from Great Gray. And this is part of what sustains me and gives me part of the answer to that question. But it sounds like part of your practice is in helping not just the dimensions of selling a practice and all those assets and moving all those plan participants and plan sponsors to a new shepherd. It's helping the business owners prepare for that next phase of their lives and where they're going to find purpose. What are some examples of realizations that you've helped people reach, like the couple that's building the home in Colorado, that helps them say, wow, okay, I guess building the house is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. We've got to find something to replace those 70 hours a week.
There's an advisor we worked with that comes to mind who lived in Pennsylvania, and great human being, who's a gentleman, was very passionate about charity work. And part of his exit, his transition was, I want to be able to, he did a multi-year kind of payment structure. I think it was payment over 5 years, equal parts. And he's like, look, this is gravy for me. It's not going to close a wealth gap for me, but I want the ability in my deal to be able to point or allocate a year's worth of payments to a charity. And the buyer said, that's fine with us, right? So that kind of person. And so we asked him, you know, what charities are you most passionate about? And he had a list of like 10 or 12. And so we said, I would encourage you, pick a few. He picked one that was around music therapy for underprivileged children. And we said, okay, great. And we encouraged him. We said, okay, what's the create a business plan basically? And it's optional, right? But we encouraged him, create a business plan for what you want to do to impact with this charity that you've worked with. And so he came back with like, he wanted to go out and raise donations, like to raise capital from donors and to build a whole new and like entity, a building where they had recording studios and a bunch of donated instruments and things like that. And so it became not just, I'm going to go give more time to a charity. It was all of a sudden, here's this new goal that has milestones and a mission that's so much more tangible, right? And so when we're, excuse me, when we're building our businesses, have this, it's the love of the chase. I remember an interview with Mark Zuckerberg when he was like, you know, looking back, what was the best part of building the business? Or like, what's your favorite memory? And he was like, it was the early days when we didn't know what was going to happen. And so it's how do you replicate that in the third act? For this gentleman in Pennsylvania, it was charity work with this organization. But all of a sudden now he had this plan and mission to build this building that would help, you know, 100 kids a year, what have you. So there's honestly, Dan, there's countless stories of that, and it only happens when people take the time to think about it and to look at it. I think a lot of business owners can, again, they love the chase, they love the game, and so there's this, I want to stay busy, I want to stay going 90 miles a minute, burning the candle from both ends. I think part of that is a fear of being still and quiet and thinking about what comes next. But the beauty comes out of those still moments. And so with buyAUM, we take, again, it's the furthest thing from a marketplace. And so our first conversation, we do a value of the business. Then we talk about the legacy matchmaker. Who do you want to pass the baton to? And finally, the third and fourth hour is about structuring the deal. What's the deal you would say yes to? So it's a very elongated process. You know, it's 3.5, 4 hours of calls over a month or so. After all of that, we culminate and send in a hard copy. It's usually Zoom because we work with advisors all over the country. We send them what we call the succession blueprint, and it's like 30 pages on nice paper, and they're fill in the blank questions of write a letter to your successor. What is your third act business plan? To not force, but to encourage folks to take the time with a cup of coffee on a Saturday and think about what do I actually want? Where do I want to have an impact with the years I have remaining?
I love it. And that journey, which is just pragmatic, it sounds to me like one of the elements you're focusing on is inherently all of us that have started businesses and had careers, especially in customer facing roles, right?
Right.
We find ourselves often playing the role of counselor. And if, you know, great customer facing executives are great listeners, right? And you develop a skill for getting people to open up and be candid and share and be vulnerable. And so that you can learn what they need and what they want and help them on that journey. And we inherently also, I think, know how to keep score. When we're building and running our businesses, we keep score of the financial outcomes that we create for our plan participants and sponsors, and then, of course, for ourselves and our practice. It's very much, it sounds like a way that you're counseling, Andrew, these business owners in the next stage of their lives to figure out a different way to keep score, right? It's still a scoreboard and they're still going to be making progress towards a goal, but it's in a different domain. Is that a reasonable way to think about it?
It's a beautiful way to say it. It's very articulate. And I think, you know, we had a gentleman that was in the panhandle of Florida. Great practice, small, simple, him, no assistance, super clean. I want to be out. I want to sell it. I want to be fully paid in 2 years. Great, we can do that. So we went through our process and found a buyer that fit with him. He met with like 2 or 3, which is our typical cadence, no more than 3, because, you know, I don't want to get flooded with LOIs. He found one. He really liked him. He picked him. They went into due diligence. Buyer side, love this practice. Here's a deal. Met all of his terms. He gets to the LOI stage, and now it's real. And he hadn't put the time in. He was a fisherman, loves fishing, had a boat. You know, I'm fixing the engine on the boat, all of that. And all of a sudden he went, you know, I can't fish 7 days a week. And we're like, We talked about this, Patrick. Like, I know. So I think the cost is all of a sudden it's who am I outside of this? And so yeah, I think if you were to keep score in your words or create a new scoreboard for the third act, that is a very important piece of that because I can't golf 7 days a week. I get tired of it.
Yeah. I'm with you. Golf, playing guitar, these are partial pursuits. They need to be part-time, right? You do it full-time and it'll start feeling like a job again. So let's go back a little bit, Andrew. At what age do you recommend and do you start advocating to the plan advisors with whom you work to start thinking about this? And I suspect it's at a time when they might react and say, really, this early? How
Yeah.
early is too early, if ever?
I think it's hard to put an age on it, right? Like we're working with one gentleman that's in the Tampa area. He is 85 years old and he's sharp as a tack. I'll give him that. The value of his book has decreased significantly because the average age of his client is older. His clients are passing away. The children are going, I don't feel comfortable with you managing my parents' asset, like et cetera, right? So the holes in the boat continue to pop up.
Yeah.
On the other side, we're working with, gentleman that's early 60s. He's like, I got 10 years left, but I want to take all the unfun hats off. Let me join it. So I think it is less of a function of like a hard age because I meet with like a 2 to 3, probably 2 dozen advisors a week for an hour. It's a jammed schedule. 65 looks different there's a wide disparagement of how 65 can look. And so some folks at 65 go, I got another 10, 12 years left. Some are like, I am sliding into home base. So I think it's less of a function of age. It's more of how early am I between when I want to hang the cleats up. And I would say it a minimum 3 years before I want to not put the cleats on anymore at all. Mm-hmm. That's when it's like, it's go time. 5 years out from that is a great time to start saying, what's the value of my practice? How can I improve it? It's like selling your house, right? You want to, a couple years out, you should pressure wash it. You should get it painted, maybe redo the kitchen and enjoy it for a couple years, right? So I think it's a function of between 5 to 3 years, kind of decreasing before I want to be done. Yeah. And so, I think a successful transition plan is, hey, and we're working with a gentleman also in PA. His wife has 18 months left. She's a school teacher. She hits pension in 18 months. And he's like, I'd like to get something done so that when she retires, I can travel with her. I don't necessarily want to be totally out, but I'd like to be down to, 5 to 10 hours a week, training the successor. That's a nice kind of glide path. The reality is, Dan, it's the risk and reward kind of seesaw. If I say I want to sell today and be out fully tomorrow, lump sum upfront, whether it's a plan participant, whether it's wealth management or broker dealer, all of the risk is on the buyer. And so someone might buy your practice, but it's going to be a heck of a lot less than, hey, pay me half today, half in a year, half in 2 years. I'm going to help transition the clients. So I think that's the unspoken fact that people wait too long for, is that most transition plans, after you've found the person you want to sell to, after you've gone back and forth and redlined a purchase agreement, it's usually 24 to 36 months of a payout. And so if you rush that, all of a sudden you feel behind. So I think 3 to 5 years is the optimal time from when I don't want to put the cleats on anymore.
That makes a lot of sense. And if you look at it from the perspective of a buyer, they're going to want to derive as much value as they can through that transition with the knowledge and relationship equity that founder has. And if it's abrupt, you're getting less of that wind down. You need a lot of runway to land the plan.
Yeah. From a buyer's perspective, it's numbers game, right? It's, I'm paying you for recurring revenue or revenue as a whole. I want to protect that revenue. You are the face that has been maintaining that revenue. The longer you stay on, the higher probability that the revenue stays safe. So I think, it's hard to disconnect the emotional blood, sweat, and tears. Like I've built my business. I love my business. Someone said, hey, it's worth X. I'd probably say, it's probably X plus Y, right? Because I have the emotional and buy. And that's true for most business owners. So I think we have to keep in mind from a buyer's perspective, not to say it's just another deal, because a lot of our buyers are very intentional about stepping into the shoes and the legacy that a sunsetter or a seller has built. But it's a math equation at the end of the day.
That's right. Well, you've also raised a very good point about the potential for value erosion in the later years of a practice as a plan advisor, especially if it's a sole proprietor, ages, and therefore so too are the clients and the assets in the portfolio they're in. Is you got to be mindful of when's the top of that bell curve, and does it coincide with your readiness to step away? Those are two not necessarily congruent curves, right?
That's very true. And often they're different. And I think that is the harsh reality, that it's kind of like owners begin to look like their dogs. It's like business owners begin to look like their clients. And it's hard to combat a discount of the average age of your clients are 74 years old. I mean, they're in RMD phase. The book is shrinking by definition. And so the only way to combat that is building a bridge to the next generation, whether it's a free plan, whether it's free advice. Get this son, daughter, the next gen, 50K account. I'm not going to charge you on it, but we've built a relationship. That's the only way to combat against a discount of average age of client. But often they are not congruent with each other.
That's right. And I'm thinking of another analogy, Andrew. As you reach out to plan advisors, they're probably prepared to, just like you were when your eventual co-founder called you, you're prepared for a pitch. And you're probably not prepared for somebody to say, no, I'm not here to talk about your plan participants' financial outcomes. I'm here to talk about you. And it reminds me of like when the flight attendant tells you when the oxygen mask drops, put yours on first before trying to help somebody else, right?
Yeah, it's
You're
exactly
that person, right? How do you break through that with people to help them understand? No, we're talking about you today. Let's focus on your journey. It's almost like a context switch you have to flip for them.
I think a lot of it goes into our team of cold callers that are making 12 to 1,500 calls a week to advisors. Our best caller's making 2,000 calls a week. He's a machine. It's timing, right? And so it's, Dan, I want to be honest with you. It's a cold call. Do you want to hang up or let me have 30 seconds? Everybody goes, oh, it's great. I'll give you 30 seconds. And then it's about you, right? And most often, we're hitting people when succession is a thought in the back of their mind. It's not anything they've taken action on. It's something they're afraid of. And it's like, let's get a value of your business and let's meet for 30 minutes. And at that point, either they go, I'm not ready. I'm 5 years out. I'm afraid to look at this, whatever. And that's fine. Or they say, great, this isn't going to cost me anything. You're fully compensated on the buy side. You're offering me real value and you're not going to blast my information to the market. What do you ask from me? And I say, I ask openness and effort. To come to these calls open for me to ask you questions. Dan, if you were locked in a room for 60 days, what in your business would break? Yeah. And answer that. Like, that's the type of conversations that we're having. So I think it is a timing situation. We have advisors that go through our process and they say, this has been great. I've learned that I'm not ready yet. I do want to wait a couple of years. Or smaller practices that maybe trade at 2.25 times revenue. And they say, I'm just going to work for another couple of years. That's probably a good idea, Dan. So yeah, I think it's the honest, authentic kind of personality of our firm is to say, it is what it is. If you're going to give me the respect to sit on a call for an hour and allow me to answer you, or to ask you these questions, I think that's where the beautiful part, the magic of the conversation comes out. You hit the nail on the head. A lot of times it's helping advisors self-discover what is actually important to them.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. Now, speaking of what's important to them, let's do this. I love punctuating these conversations with our guests with this question. That is it all you've learned, even as a young guy compared to me, an old guy closer to the end of my career than the beginning? You're the opposite. You've started this trajectory not that long ago. But if you can go back in time to when you first started and you had that time machine to go back and talk to a young Andrew Mirolli, what advice would you be giving him?
I would tell him to look for the stairs and don't wait for the elevator. I think too often whether it's entrepreneurs or in a hobby or in a new career or mid-career, everyone, especially these days, oh, with AI, it's boom, 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 I'm a millionaire, or boom, 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 I got 100 million. And look, I mean, just take steps every day, work your butt off, but don't wait on the ground floor for the elevator to take you to the roof. Go up one step a week, and in a year, you'll look back and you're on the fifth floor. That's what I wish I would have learned in many aspects of my life young.
I love it. That is great advice. Don't wait for the elevator. It's
I
great.
love it. Dan, what's yours? I know you do these a lot, but what's your advice to a younger you?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, Andrew. If I were to encapsulate it in the start of my sales career, which is what I spent most of my life doing before I was a CEO and then a private equity investor, it would be shut up and listen. Meaning, and what I had to learn early in my career is the power of a great question, which means you talk less and you open up your ears. There's a reason God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth.
I love it.
Well, Andrew, this has been a fun conversation. We could go on for hours, and maybe some other time we will and catch up further. I want to thank you for joining us. I know our guests have gotten a lot out of this, and I look forward to joining again with another guest for yet another episode of Gray to Great. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to Gray to Great. I hope you're walking away with a few new ideas, a few bold strategies, and a bit more fuel to take your business further than ever. If you found today's conversation valuable, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a colleague. The best way to stay sharp is to keep learning together. So I'll see you next time right here where we will cut through the noise to bring you what really matters. Until then, keep pushing forward because there's no gray area in achieving success.